Donald Trump was sipping his morning coffee in the Oval Office, the warm sunlight streaming through the tall windows behind him. The aroma of the dark roast filled the room, a moment of calm before the usual storm of presidential duties. His assistant, Emily, entered briskly, her heels clicking against the polished floor. She held a thick envelope in her hand, her expression a mix of urgency and concern. "Mr. President, you need to see this," she said, placing the envelope on his desk. Trump raised an eyebrow, setting his cup down before opening the file. Inside were several documents detailing an incident in New York. Officer Frank Anderson, a member of the city's police force, had unjustly arrested an African-American chauffeur named George. The arrest was allegedly without cause, and the file included eyewitness testimonies and even grainy video footage from a bystander. Trump frowned deeply as he skimmed through the pages. "Emily, I want a full, detailed report on this by the end of the day. Equality is not just a concept. It's the backbone of our justice system. If this file is accurate, it's not just George's trust that's been betrayed, but the trust of every citizen in our nation," he said firmly, his tone leaving no room for doubt. The gravity of the situation weighed heavily on Trump. He knew that addressing it would mean taking a stand that could be both politically sensitive and personally challenging. But as he often reminded his staff, leadership wasn't about avoiding risks. It was about doing what was right. To get a clearer understanding of the issue, Trump summoned the Secretary of Homeland Security for an urgent meeting. Hours of investigation followed, involving eyewitness accounts, video analyses, and internal police reports. The evidence was overwhelming. Officer Anderson's actions were not only unprofessional, but blatantly discriminatory. Trump's expression hardened as he reviewed the findings. "This is unacceptable. We cannot allow such behavior to go unchecked. Prepare a statement. I'll address this publicly," he instructed his communications team. At a press conference in the White House Rose Garden, Trump stood before a sea of reporters. "The incident in New York involving Officer Frank Anderson is deeply troubling," he began, his voice steady but resolute. "As the President of the United States, I cannot and will not tolerate injustice in any form. This administration is committed to upholding the principles of equality and fairness for all citizens." One journalist from the crowd raised their hand. "Mr. President, taking such a stand could be politically risky, especially with the upcoming elections. Are you prepared for the backlash?" Trump smiled faintly, his gaze unwavering. "Standing for justice is never a risk," he replied. "On the contrary, it's the path to earning the trust of our people. Without justice, there can be no real leadership." Part 2. The Path to Justice. Determined to address the issue personally, Trump made an unplanned trip to New York. As Air Force One touched down, he was greeted by an enthusiastic crowd gathered at the airport. Supporters held signs reading, "Justice for all," and "Leadership that cares." Trump stepped off the plane, waving to the crowd before addressing them briefly. "Today, I'm here not just for one individual, but to ensure justice for everyone. This nation was built on the principle that all men and women are created equal, and we must live up to that promise," he said. His motorcade made its way through the bustling streets of New York City, eventually arriving at the precinct where the incident had occurred. Trump's presence was both unexpected and unprecedented, drawing a mix of curiosity and apprehension from the officers on duty. Inside, he met Officer Anderson, who stood stiffly in his uniform, trying to mask his discomfort. Trump didn't mince words. "Officer Anderson, you took an oath to serve and protect the citizens of this nation," he said, his voice firm and unyielding. "Your actions are a betrayal of that oath." Anderson attempted to deny the accusations, claiming he had acted within the bounds of his duties. But Trump was prepared. Eyewitnesses were brought forward, and the video footage was played, leaving no room for doubt. The evidence was damning, and Anderson's excuses faltered. Turning to Anderson, Trump's tone softened, but remained resolute. "This country was built on the principle that people are judged by the content of their character, not the color of their skin. You have a duty to uphold those principles, not undermine them. For that reason, you must answer for your actions." After addressing Anderson, Trump requested to meet George, the man who had been unjustly arrested. George entered the room hesitantly, his hands trembling slightly. He was a middle-aged man with kind eyes that now reflected a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. Mr. President, I never thought I'd see the day when someone in your position would care about someone like me, George said, his voice breaking. The fact that you've come all this way to stand up for me means more than I can put into words. Trump placed a reassuring hand on George's shoulder. You're not alone, George. No one in this country should ever feel that way. This is about more than just you. It's about making sure this never happens to anyone else, he said. Outside the precinct, a larger crowd had gathered, their chants of justice for all growing louder. Trump stepped out to address them, his presence met with cheers and applause. Our justice system must acknowledge its mistakes and correct them, he declared. Today, justice has been served, not just for one citizen, but for all citizens who believe in fairness and equality. The broader impact. News of Trump's actions spread like wildfire, dominating headlines and social media platforms. Supporters praised his decisive leadership, while critics acknowledged the courage it took to tackle such a sensitive issue head-on. Communities across the country began organizing discussions about justice and equality, inspired by the president's commitment to fairness. For George, the experience was life-changing. With Trump's encouragement, he became an advocate for social justice, sharing his story to inspire others. And for Trump, the event reaffirmed his belief that true leadership wasn't about political gains, but about standing up for what was right. In the weeks that followed, Trump's administration announced new initiatives aimed at addressing systemic biases in law enforcement. These measures included mandatory training programs, stricter accountability standards, and a task force dedicated to investigating claims of misconduct. The incident in New York became a turning point, a reminder that even in the face of division, the principles of justice and equality could unite a nation. For Trump, it was a victory not just as a leader, but as a defender of the values that defined America.